Hi there, here we go. It's May 3rd, 2026. And what's going on in these markets today? Well, let's talk about that. Well, we got markets at all-time highs. We have the Straits of Hormuz closed. Oil supplies are getting about to run out in Europe and places like Asia and Europe. And there's no panic. There's no panic in the market. There's no care. There's just very lackadaisical. And it's due for a correction. I mean, unless there's a peace deal that's signed immediately and this strait opens back up, we're talking about oil shortages right around the corner, 2 to 3 weeks from now. And nobody seems to care. Now, I talked about this last week on how this was just all a setup for COVID 2.0, how they're going to print trillions of dollars to counter the crisis. And that is still my belief. This belief. I mean, things aren't what they appear on the surface. I mean, let's look at it. A ceasefire with Iran. The ceasefire was agreed to by Iran, and neither side has been shooting rockets off at each other for the last few weeks, including Israel. Now, that's kind of fishy to me. That's very fishy because I thought Iran was a backward-ass country that was filled with mullahs and psychopaths. But somehow they're abiding by the peace deal, or the ceasefire. Not a peace deal yet, but a ceasefire. They're abiding by this, which is fishy. And I told you last week, I think this is all by design. I think the Iranians are in on this. I think the Israelis are in on this. And I think the Chinese and a lot of big nations are in on this. This is COVID 2.0, and what it's doing is designed to bring the financial economy, the global financial economy, to its knees somewhat, but into a recoverable position to where central banks can print trillions to keep the Ponzi scheme going. So it's just kind of fishy to me that Iran, the psychopaths in Iran, aren't starting any kind of stuff. It's just things aren't what they appear. I mean, countries aren't what we think they are. There's alliances that are made. There's power struggles. There's globalist central banks that control the monetary system of the globe. I mean, there's a lot of moving parts, but within the moving parts, there is kind of a unification on how this global financial system, global governance system works. And I know the media and the governments like to portray to the American people and to the government citizens around the world that these governments are somewhat independent or completely independent, but they're not. They're not. This is all a bigger agenda. And let me go back to that. Let me give you evidence why they're not. There's a central bank in every nation on earth, and these central banks communicate with each other like a hive. They do certain things. They have certain policy measures that coalesce around the same agenda. Tell me that countries are independent after you know this, having this knowledge. How are they independent? Yes, they have some independence. But at the end of the day, they're all unified. They're all tied within the interwoven knot of the global financial system. And so any kind of outsiders, any kind of like Saddam Hussein or the mullahs in Iran, any kind of dissent against the global system quickly gets squashed out. Gaddafi, Maduro, Saddam, the mullahs in Iran. And now in Iran, you probably have Trump is probably correct when he says the government in Iran is much more friendly to the U.S. because it's controlled by the U.S. And this is just all an arrangement of some kind of global oil shortage, fertilizer shortage, some kind of recessionary event that's going to occur. This is all being arranged and orchestrated to create trillions of dollars. And Trump is playing this game like, oh, they're sending over a peace proposal and I'm going to look at it and I doubt it's going to be worth anything. Well, what is this? This is extend and pretend. This is delay. The longer Trump delays, the bigger the crisis will be. And inevitably, if the crisis is bigger, then the central banks have cover to print trillions, tens of trillions of dollars in currency units around the world with all their ilk of central banks. And then the politicians that are in on this get to share some of the wealth. It's a bribery. The central banks bribing the politicians, particularly Trump. If you do this, your family's going to be rich beyond its wildest belief. And so he does it. It's all designed. So how do we play this financially? How do we play this investing-wise? I mean, you can believe whatever you want to believe. I just think that, it's too organized. It's too organized. There's no dissent anywhere. The Iranians are talking shit, Trump's talking shit, but at the end of the day, they're all abiding by the ceasefire. And, Trump makes the Iranians, the mullahs I think are all gone. The mullahs are gone. I think it's more like some kind of insider government that basically rose up. The mullahs are dead. The insiders that are part of the global family rose up or are rising up now, and they're controlling the game now. The mullahs are gone. The religious leader's dead. So they've got absolute power in that country. So the strait still isn't opened. It's not opened. And this is by design. So, they're predicting, analysts are predicting that Europe is going to run out of jet fuel in 4 to 5 weeks or 6 weeks. That means flights are going to be grounded. That means air travel is going to be grounded. Let's go back in time 5-6 years ago. What happened during COVID number 1? Well, air travel stopped because of the virus. Well, now you got jet fuel shortages because of this COVID 2.0 virus that they've just inflicted on the world through closing the major artery that flows 20% of the oil supply, 20% of fertilizer. I don't know if it's 20%, but it's a great amount of fertilizer goes through that strait, which you're talking planting season, you're talking the repercussions of this are going to be huge, which is what they need. They need to print trillions. So how do we play this financially? I think gold is going to take a little hit because of the people fleeing into the dollar. It's going to take a little bit of a hit, but when the inevitable bailouts come in the fall, which I still believe is this fall, right before the midterm elections, this is how it's going to play out. This is how I think it's going to play out. Give it another couple weeks, they're going to have a peace deal. Okay? Trump's going to sign the peace deal. The Iranians are going to agree to the peace deal because, again, they're all in on it. They already got it all planned out. We just need to delay a little longer to make the pain worse. So they're going to wait a couple more weeks to make the pain worse, and they're going to have a peace deal. Then there's going to be global oil shortages because this works like a freight train. The last tankers have already showed up to the port, so there hasn't been an interruption in the oil supply ever since this war started. But now we're going to have an interruption because now the pipeline, I've heard somebody use the analogy that the pipeline was flowing oil from the Middle East to the world, but this part got cut off. This part was still flowing, and now you got this big pipeline that's gone. It's just incinerated. It's been obliterated. The pipeline, the oil pipeline to 20% of the world is gone. It stopped. It stopped flowing 2 months ago. So now the oil is coming out of the last bit of the pipeline, but there's nothing to replenish it because it's still closed. So we haven't even begun to see the crisis yet. It's coming. The market has its head in the sand. It doesn't even realize what's coming. But it's coming, and people are going to panic, and they're going to panic into the dollar. They're going to get out of stocks. The stock market could probably correct by 20%, and they're going to run into the dollar. Gold will correct. All the resource stocks will correct. But then in the fall, when the resumption of the oil supply continues, and they turn on the spigots, the pipeline in the Middle East through the 20% of supply through Hormuz is opened again, then the oil will be reestablished probably by the summertime at some point. But then there's going to be economic chaos from the shutdown, just like COVID. And they're going to print trillions in the fall, which is going to stimulate again. So financially, how do we play this? Well, gold is going to take a hit. Everything's going to take a hit. People are going to flee into the dollar. People are going to flee out of equities. This could crash somewhat the stock market and the bond market. But they will counter this slowdown, this crash, this mini crash, by turning the spigots back on in the Middle East with this arranged peace deal. And then subsequently, they will print trillions in the fall. And that will buy them a few more years of this Ponzi scheme, which I discussed last week. Then at that point in time, gold will skyrocket, oil will skyrocket, commodities will skyrocket, and the resumption of the commodity bull market will continue in earnest. And that is how we can play this. So, number one, a couple more weeks of pain. Pain will start showing up at the doorstep. And when the pain starts showing up at the doorstep, we got a peace deal. First, we need the pain. The pain hasn't occurred globally yet. It's occurred maybe in parts of Asia, parts of India, but it hasn't occurred globally. When Europe starts running out of jet fuel and Europe starts feeling the pinch from all this, then you're going to have a peace deal. The peace deal will be signed when the stock market corrects 10 to 15%, 20%. Then all of a sudden the peace deal is going to be signed. And then the resumption of oil will flow. And then the bailouts will come in the fall. And then the stock market will go to record highs. And commodities will shoot through the moon. And that's how I believe this is going to play out. This is all orchestrated to keep the Ponzi scheme going, to breathe life into a dying financial system that should have died probably 20 years ago, because it's a fiat monetary system, and fiat monetary systems historically only last for about 40 to 50 years. This one is probably going on for 50 to 60 years. So this one is done. So drastic measures have to be created to keep this Ponzi scheme going. COVID, shutdown of 20% of the oil supply to the major artery of the global trade. It all flows through Hormuz. So close that down, bring the pain, reopen, and then create trillions of currency units to counter the pain that was brought about by artificially closing the Straits of Hormuz. So this is what this is all about. I'm probably 90%, all right, let's say 80% certain that this is what it is. All right? If you know a little bit about financial history, you know a little bit how fiat monetary systems work, and you see what's on the line for the global controllers of the world and how they want to keep this system alive, how it continually needs liquidity injections pumped into it, then you will understand that this is necessary by our controllers. And the controllers are all webbed, entangled, enmeshed together from their perspective central banks. Every single nation on earth has a central bank. And every central bank communicates like a hive network with each other on monetary policy. They're all part of the global web, interwoven together. So this is how the system works. This is what the controllers have created, and in a meshed web that wraps around the circumference of the earth, and it's all intertwined. And within this enmeshed web is leaders that act like they're independent, nations that act like they're independent, but they are somewhat restricted by this entangled web that controls the financial system. So they're being instructed to do this. Trump is being instructed to do this. And the Iranians and the Israelis and the Chinese, I mean, look at China. They stocked up on oil. They knew this was coming. If you look at the Chinese, I'll leave you with this last thing. The Chinese were stocked up ever since Trump got elected. They passed some law in China that they would have oil storage facilities, that they would load up on oil. And that's what they've been doing ever since Trump got elected in November of 24. They've been stocking up, and they are so loaded with oil that they can weather the storm for 6, 7, 8 months, and they'll be fine. So tell me that the global interwoven web is independent, that they're all independent of one another. I don't think so. How did the Chinese know about this? Are they just that smart, or were they tipped off? I'll leave you with that. Have a nice weekend. We'll be back probably next week or the week after.